everyone. Kristen and I have been doing extended trips in our trailer since 2024, and we really enjoy making modifications to our trailer, which is a good hobby to have if you're going to live out on a trailer for extended periods of time. One thing we've had happen a few times is we've had our trailer fairings crack. I presume this is happening from rocks kicked up off truck tires as we're out on the road. At first, we replaced the fairings with another plastic fairing that we ordered, and it cost around $35 or so. But this time around, we decided to make our own metal fairings with some sheet metal and some spray-on rubber in hopes that maybe they'll last a little bit better than the plastic ones. Here's the end result of what we made, and I'll walk you through what we did to create these. But as you probably already noticed from the start of this video, I have no professional video production talents in the least. And while I tried to film bits of what I was doing, it was tough to do with my phone in one hand and a mallet in the other. So first off, make sure obviously to measure your fairing. I'm not sure if this is standard or not, but ours was about 28.5 inches long in the front and 3 3/4 inches on the side. It went down about 5 inches before it started kind of curving around in a bend. And as I kind of bent my tape measure down along the bend, the total length of the fairing was about 8.5 inches. To make two fairings, I bought a 24 by 36 sheet of sheet metal from the hardware store. Now I cut out 33 1/4 inch by 9.5 inch sections to make my fairings. In hindsight, I would have cut them bigger. I wanted to do a fold around the outer rim so that there wasn't a sharp piece of metal on the edge of the fairing. So I added an extra 1/2 inch to each side. We had, from my initial measurements, 28.5 for the long run plus 3 3/4 for the short run, which adds up to 32 1/4 inches. So I cut mine at 33 1/4 so that I could add a 1/2 inch fold on each end. And as I said, it measured out to 8.5 inches in height when I bent around the curve. So adding an extra 1/2 inch to each end took it to 9.5 inches for the width on my pieces. If I were to do this again, I'd go with a wider fold area just to make sure when I drill the holes through the fairing to attach it to the trailer, the holes are going through the fold just for that extra strength. Here's a chart for my cuts where I changed it to 1.5 inches on the fold, which makes it for an 11.5 inch width and a 35 1/4 inch length. You could even go a little more if you wanted. Say you just want to cut right at the 12 inch mark on your 24 by 36. So you end up with two 12 by 36 sheets to work with. That'd be fine. Just make sure that your fold lines meet up so that you have the correct dimensions that you found with your existing plastic fairings. In addition to the fold lines on the edges of the slab, the ones in red on this picture, I made a few more marks. The green line designates my corner, where the fairing is going to wrap around the corner of the trailer. The dashed pink and purple lines reflect where we're going to do some bends to create that curve back to the trailer frame that we have on our plastic fairing. Finally, the orange diagonal line on the image reflects the cut we're going to make. We're going to want to trim a little metal out to accommodate the bends on the front and the side of the fairing so that everything comes together okay. I wanted about a 30-degree angle or so on the cut, so I put a dot 3 1/4 inches from the side along the bottom fold line. Then I drew a straight line from that dot to where the green corner meets the pink bend line. This will be clearer later, if it's not precise, that's okay. It just seemed reasonably close to where I want my cuts. I should mention, if you're making a fairing for both sides of your trailer, the green line will, of course, be on the other side of the sheet. If you're doing this for the driver's side, this image that you're looking at right now with the green line on the left would be for the passenger side of the trailer. If your fairing is not the same dimension as mine, of course, you're going to need to adjust the sizes accordingly. Okay, so after I cut my sheet, I notched the corners along the fold line and took a metal file along the entire cut edges just to try and remove stuff that I'm sure I would end up, in my clumsiness, cutting my hands on later if I just left them there. I then lined up my sheet on a Sawhorse along one of the long fold lines and tied it down using 2 clamps. From there I took a mallet and pounded the sheet to get sort of a 90-degree or so bend along that fold line. I then unclamped the sheet, laid it on the ground with my 90-degree fold facing up, and I used the mallet to complete the fold. I did the same thing for the other side, the other long side of the sheet. After that, I did the same for the two short sides of the sheet. The goal here was just not to have any sharp edges on the outside of this sheet. I will add that I used a metal file in the corners where the folds overlap, just to try to make sure it was reasonably safe, since there was a little bit of edge that's now showing on the side. Okay, now that we have a properly sized sheet with smooth edges, we want to make the bends in the middle. I started doing this by making a gentle bend along the corner line. That's the green line from the diagram I showed you earlier. We don't need or want to go too far with this bend because we're going to do these long bends along the dash pink and purple lines to kind of angle this guy back. But having a slight bend here at the corner is going to be handy after we cut our notch to just sort of manually get this 90-degree bend at the side that we'll need. Now we'll clamp down along the lower horizontal bend line. We want to pound this to around a 45-degree angle. You'll be able to manually adjust this later, so it doesn't have to be exact. And now we'll bend a 45-degree angle around the higher horizontal bend line. You can see how this is kind of bending back to meet the trailer frame at the bottom. The next step is to cut out the notch in the corner, that angled line that we have made, as well as the green corner line going down to the bottom from there. We'll need to get we'll need to bend the curve on the short line a little more so that it can fit above and be behind the long curved side, and then create a 90-degree bend at the corner line. You can see the corners don't really come together perfect here, so I just set the fairing on the end of some loose boards, and with a mallet and a regular hammer, I kind of pounded it just to get it in and kind of give it a more connected look. This is a great time to dry fit the fairing on the trailer to make sure you have the fit right. To reinforce that corner, I drilled a couple of holes through the sheet, and I put a nut and bolt through with some Loctite so that it doesn't come loose as you're driving around. Now I want to drill the holes to mount the metal fairing. Let's head back to the trailer. You'll want to remove the plastic fairing first. You may notice before I removed the plastic fairing, I made some small pen marks where the drill holes were. I also measured how far down from the top those holes were, as we're going to need to make the same holes on the metal fairing. When I lined up my metal fairing, I drew marks down from the pen marks on the trailer, and then did cross marks at the depth for the drill holes. I put the fairing back on my Sawhorse and knocked the hole sites with a nail set to make it a little easier to drill. This will work best if you have the fairing flat against the Sawhorse when you're using the nail set, and then kind of scoot the fairing past the side of the Sawhorse when you actually drill the holes. Just to be safe, before we spray the new metal fairings, I took them back to the trailer just to make sure all the holes were lined up properly. I went with Flex Seal to do the rubber coating on the fairings, but there are plenty of products that will work. You'll obviously want to put down some newspaper or 10mm poly to set your fairings on before you actually paint. I went ahead and painted both sides of the fairing. I'm not sure it really matters if I painted the back, but I figured why not? I didn't have another use for that can. I went ahead and used an adhesive foam padding on the inside of the fairing before I mounted it, and then I screwed the fairing into place. You'll want to run a bead of caulk around everything you do once you're done. And that's it. It's not rocket science. It's not rocket science, and I'm guessing many others would have better ideas of how to handle this. But if you're tired of replacing broken plastic fairings, I hope this may be of use to you. Thanks for watching.